All right, folks, thank you so much for joining us for today's presentation, our career webinar, Back to Workshop, Integrating Professional Aspirations with Personal Values. My name is Jeff Murphy. I'm a member of the Alumni Career Engagement Team here in the BU Office of Alumni Relations. Today's event is offered to our 385,000 alumni around the globe. And we appreciate everybody tuning in, particularly those of you that are tuning in somewhat far away from Boston and BU's campuses. Throughout your career, BU is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals, and we aim to do this by providing everyone with access to a series of valuable programs, tools, and communities. In addition to this webinar series that you've joined us for, one of our most exciting resources is a free online community called BU Connects. If you haven't already signed up, I'll ask that you take just 5 minutes after this presentation to do so. You can set up your profile at buconnects.com. There are already over 28,000 alumni and current students on BU Connects. It's the very best place to build your professional network with other Terriers, join regional special interest groups, and become a mentor, find a mentor, or maybe even both. BU Connects is actually the best place to join the Terrier Alumni Parents Network, our co-sponsor for today's event. And I've asked my friend and colleague Liliana Mickle to join us today just to briefly share a little bit more about what we call the TAP network. So Liliana, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jess, and Jeff, and thank you, Jess, for being with us. I appreciate everyone joining us. My name is Liliana Mickle. I'm the Associate Director for Alumni Engagement and responsible for managing the Terrier Alumni Parents Network. Boston University's Alumni Association is interested in engaging alums at the age, stage, and special interest rate, and therefore we launched the Terrier Alumni Parent Network in December 2022 as a place where you can connect, bring your children back to BU so they can see where you have been and where you are and traverse the campus that you did when you were an undergraduate, as well as attend webinars and special events. For example, we have an upcoming event scheduled for Friday, April 19th from 1 to 4 in the Fit Rec Center. Last year, it was a huge success. We used the climbing wall, we used basketball courts, and this year I'm planning to see if we can add the pool where you can bring your children, release them for fun, engagement, energy, getting some of that energy off. So please consider joining us and joining the TAP network. You can scan the QR code or email me, and I'd be happy to talk with you about joining the network and possibly maybe even presenting a webinar in the future yourself. Thank you again for being with us. And Jess, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you again for partnering with TAP.
Thanks, Liliana. I attended that Family Fun Day last year. It was a total blast, and hopefully I'll be back for it again this year. But thanks for doing this event with us. And again, it's a great, folks my age anyway, this idea of balancing work and life can be a challenge, and that's what brings us here today for our great workshop. But before we dive in, before I introduce our speaker, just a couple housekeeping notes from me. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on the Alumni and Friends website, which you can find at bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker today is very eager to answer any and all of your questions. You're welcome to submit them throughout the presentation. Again, on Zoom, you're going to want to hover over your screen, select Q&A from the Zoom toolbar, and go ahead and type in your question at any point. I will also keep an eye out for questions that come in on the chat. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day, brand strategist, business consultant, and career exploration coach, and College of Communication alum, Jess Hekmat. Jess works with entrepreneurs, startups, and businesses to articulate and manifest their purpose. She partners with individuals and organizations seeking clarity and impact to find and tell their story. Through Back to Workshop, Jess offers courses, workshops, retreats, and events to reconnect people with themselves, their family, and their ambition. She also writes radically honest essays on family dynamics, marriage, and parenthood via her Substack newsletter, Cycle Breaker. Jess, I signed up for that this morning and was already reading some of your great articles. Jess has over 20 years of business and communications experience. Again, BS in mass communications from BU Com, as well as an MBA from UCLA Anderson, and experience working with agencies, startups, Fortune 500 companies. Jess applies a creative and strategic approach to each project she takes on. Her clients span business and consumer tech, fashion and lifestyle, medical and wellness, nonprofit and social enterprise, as well as individual coaching clients. Jess, I'm super excited for this talk today. As you already know, this issue is something I struggle with, this idea of balancing your professional aspirations with your personal values. And so I'm really thrilled that you've agreed to do this presentation for us. Why don't we go ahead? I know you've got a slide deck to share. Do you want to go ahead and get that up and running? And then the floor is all yours.
Great.
Perfect.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, everyone. Jeff is going to throw up a poll question before we dig into the presentation. The point of the poll is Jeff did a fabulous job of introducing me, so now you all know who's talking to you, but I don't really know who I'm talking to other than where you're located. So please take a look at the pop-up that just came up on your screen. The first question is, which of the following describes your current situation best? Not currently working outside the home, currently on parental leave, recently returned to work from parental leave, or transitioning to a new job or career.
Got just about half of folks that have tuned in that have figured out which answer they best fit into. Here we go. Here we go. All right. So let me share these results so you can see them. Not a surprise. We've got kind of a wide variety of folks that are here for different reasons.
Awesome. That's great. And then one more question, which should pop up in a second on your screen if it hasn't yet. Are you the primary caregiver responsible for day-to-day needs related to childcare in your home, your family dynamic? Yes, no, or does not apply. I also didn't want to assume that everyone's a parent that logged in, because to be perfectly honest, this work that I do is informed by my consulting services with businesses, and I think it applies to anyone in any organization. But we did, tailor our talk today specifically to those that are dealing with the challenges of both parenthood and career ambitions being fulfilled. So go ahead and click that one if you haven't already.
No surprises here.
All right.
Most folks here are primary caregivers. So
As
glad
am
that
I.
you're all here. Yeah.
All right, great. So we will dig into it. Thank you for answering those questions for me. And thank you again to Jeff and Liliana, to the alumni group and TAP for inviting me to be part of this presentation. I'm super excited. And I got to warm up actually at my high school's career day, 2 days ago, which was much more intimidating than this is, because high schoolers are scary. So I can only imagine how awesome it would be to come back to BU with my kids now. I actually came a few years ago. I brought my oldest, who's now 7. He was like 2 or 3 at the time, to see the campus. And I'm so excited to see of all the programming that you guys are doing, because I would love to bring them back and for them to get an idea of. I also think that as parents, it's fun to expose our children to who we were before they knew us as parents, and creates this sense of empathy and connection that's outside of your role of parenting them. So I think that's a great opportunity. Before we dig into the meat of what we're going to talk about today, I want to just take 30 seconds to get grounded in this space. If your phone is not on do not disturb already, please do that if you can. Remove any distractions. If you need to close a door or turn something off, just whatever you need to do to zone in. Sit still. If you're comfortable, close your eyes. We're going to do something called belly breathing. You can place one hand on your chest and one hand on your abdomen. The way it works is we inhale through our nose for about 4 seconds, feeling your abdomen expand. It should feel like a balloon, or your belly filling into your hands, holding that breath for about 2 seconds, and then exhaling very slowly through the mouth for 6 seconds. So let's do it together. We inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, hold 1, 2, and exhale through your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Another one, inhale deeply through the nose, expanding your belly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, and exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Thank you for doing that with me. I hope that it brought you into this space and ready to be present. I actually use that exercise frequently because I find that it's really helpful as we are shifting between the different roles and identities that we play in our lives. So sometimes I'm coming off of a very crazy morning, getting lunches ready and kids out the door, and then going straight into a meeting. And this helps me really leave that piece behind and move into the next phase that I'm going to be focusing on. And vice versa. I love doing this before my kids come home from school. Our agenda for today. I really believe you can actually get a lot out of an hour of anything, even a few minutes of anything, if you are truly intentional about it. So here's our flow for today. As Jeff said, make a note of any questions that you might have or put them in the chat, and he will help aggregate and moderate a Q&A at the end. I will tell you a little bit about myself, the workshop that I've developed, the intentions for today. Then we'll get into the meat of the framework for Back to Workshop. And then we'll end with some additional resources, how you can contact me, and we'll do the Q&A. So Jeff did a phenomenal job of introducing me. You made me sound great. Thank you. So I will not belabor that point. You have some of the descriptions here, but instead I thought I would just share a little a thought on the concept of work-life balance, which is the word balance. I don't love it. I think it's a misnomer. I think it's unrealistic. And I think it gives this concept of things being weighted evenly when I really don't think that's a fair expectation, nor is it really that healthy. So I love using the term work-life integration, which speaks to two big pieces. One, the concept that the work that you're doing professionally is informed by and integrated with your personal values, right? So who you want to be in the world, how you want to contribute your skills and experiences is aligned with what you value, your belief system, and who you really want to be as you show up in this world, right? And the other piece of it is integration speaks to the idea of fluctuation, right? It's not fully locked in or cemented. I think of and we'll talk about this when we talk about values and commitments and how we spend our time and energy. But I think of kind of all the things I do as a pie chart, the things that I value. And the pieces of that pie really fluctuate in size. And you have to be able to lean in and out. So this concept of having like the perfect pie chart of evenly divided throughout any given day, I think it doesn't serve us well. And knowing that you're going to have to lean into different areas of your life. I was telling Jeff before we logged on that this month has been a crazy month for me. And I am very aware that I'm beyond my typical bandwidth, what I've defined as optimal functioning for my family and for myself and my career. But there were all these things I really wanted to do. And so I've decided to shift most of my pie chart for this month to work and family. And that means I didn't get to work out as much. I didn't go to my last book club meeting. I haven't hung out with my friends. I'm not connecting with my partner as much as I'd like to. But I also know that this was like a 4-week little sprint, and that I'm going to start leaning back into other areas when this wraps. I'm actually going to Costa Rica next Friday for 9 days without my children. So I have the light at the end of the tunnel, and that's kind of what's keeping me going. But all to say that it's going to look different every day, and also what phase you are in life, right? What I have going on in my life with a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old is going to be different than when my children are in high school or grown adults, right? So knowing that each phase of your life is going to require different elements of you leaning in and out. So with that, as I mentioned, I'm big on intentions. I wanted to give a quick story. When I gave birth to my first son 7 years ago, I joined something called Baby Group. I think every major city has something like this, right? So it's a support group for new parents. And I remember the baby coach saying, and by the way, I continued in that group for like 5 years because it was huge anchor for sanity and support, and helped kind of frame some of this content and the framework for Back to Workshop, because it makes such a difference to do this type of self-work in community. And I remember the coach saying, there was all these books I had bought, like Bringing Up Bebe and how to like be a conscious parent. I think I had like 15 books. And the idea was, even if you don't read one of those books, already you're going to be a good conscious parent because you bought the books, right? You already have set the intention that this is what you're about and this is how you want to show up. So doing the work is important, but it's not even possible without the intention setting. I really respect that each of you made the commitment to log on today. I know that it is not easy to give up 60 minutes when there's a lot of obligations and responsibilities, but that already signals to me and to yourself that you're making a commitment to yourself. So with that, today's intentions are carving out 60 minutes for intentional practice of reconnecting with yourself, being in community and sharing a space with others who are seeking reconnection and alignment with their values and aspirations, considering the identities that you have and how they might limit or empower you. Hopefully the work we do today will plant the seed of investigating your dreams and ambitions further, and also starting to think about what's possible, to what something could look like if you reimagine a new path forward. The Back to Workshop that I do virtually and in person here in Los Angeles is developed as a 4-part framework. And again, this was inspired and informed by the work I did with entrepreneurs and startups and individual coaching clients to see what were the themes that were really rising. And it always came back to, how do we hone into our core values and how that's illustrated in everything we do, both personally and professionally. So phase 1 of the framework is let go, right? We all have these identities that we are attached to. I want to take 10 seconds. If you have I should have said at the beginning, hopefully you have something to write with, or if you have your phone with your notes section, or even if since you're on your laptop, if you want to just pull up a Word doc or something to take a few notes. You guys will get access to a version of this if you ask me for it, but I'd love for you to write down some thoughts as they come up, and then go back to them after this webinar so that you can flush them out more, because we won't have enough time to do all the writing prompts together. But I want to give you a really good idea of what this work looks like. So take a couple seconds to think through, what are some of the identities that you have? For me, it's MBA, mom, sister, daughter, partner, cycle breaker, writer, poet, volunteer at school. What are all the different things that you identify with? Persian, Jewish, first generation American, child of immigrants. These are all things that I identify with. And once you write down that those are things that you've kind of either other people have labeled you with or you've labeled yourself with, we start thinking about what are the possibilities and opportunities that rise out of these identities that we're attached to, and how have they given us power or taken power, right? Because we all have different concepts of, what does it look like to be a mom or a working mom? Or what are the responsibilities of a dad? What does it look like to be a stay-at-home dad? There are these elusive concepts of what it means to be X, Y, or Z based on, the community you grew up in, the family that you grew up in, the models you had, what your parents may or may not, or your caregivers modeled to you. So what are these identities you have, and where did they come from, right? What informed them? And then if you took away those identities, if you just put that piece of paper aside, how would you describe yourself outside of those labels, right? And some of the words I use are light, catalyst, love. Like, those are the things that I think I embody if I'm not thinking about these more earthly, obvious labels that we hold on to. So that's part 1 of this work, is really breaking down, how do I see myself and what are the roles and responsibilities that I've either been assigned by someone else or I've taken on, assuming that that's what it means to be a good daughter, partner, mother, right? The exercise I see people get most out of during this letting go phase is called values and commitments. So take another few seconds to quickly jot down the first 5 values that come to you in your mind. What drives your decisions feels most important to how you live your life. Is it honesty, integrity, fun, joy, right? These can be anything. And they may continue to evolve, but whatever the first 5 values are that come to you that you think are really prioritizing the way that you show up to life. And for each value, as you're jotting these down, you're going to want to consider, how do you describe that value? Why is it important to you? What life experiences have shaped your perception of why this is valuable to certain areas of your life? Considering whether this value belongs to you or was it inherited? Is it something that was passed down by others? Is it a value that you want to keep or let go? And what values do you want to operate from that are currently missing from these buckets? So when we do this in the full-length workshop, we do that prompt, and then we go into breaking down how you're currently spending your time and energy. So this is something I encourage everyone to do after the webinar, is look through wherever. I use like a bazillion Google calendars, right? I've got one for myself, for my work, for shared between me and my partner, one for each of my sons, so that I can actually visually see color blocked how I'm spending my day, which it does a lot for me to realize, oh, like today's all red. It's all about Charlie today. Versus here's a day I've broken out for self-care, and it's like, I've got therapy and I've got a doctor's appointment. I'm going to work out, right? So taking a look at your calendar, where however you keep track of where you're dedicating your time and your resources, what commitments you have, look over a month, because I think that's a good way of gauging, because obviously we all kind of have ebbs and flows. And consider your current and ongoing commitments. What are the main areas they fall under, and how much time are you spending on each area? So I like to do this I look at the whole month, but then I kind of average out, okay, it looks like per week, I spend this much time on this bucket. So some of the buckets that I come back to are income producing work, non-paid work, which sadly I'm doing a lot of right now, but I know that it's building towards things. So that will, that bucket might get smaller for me as time goes on. Philanthropy and volunteer work, partner and or romantic relationship, caring for dependents, that might include children. And also we're in this really interesting phase of life where we're starting to care for aging parents. There might be other immediate family members that have needs that you play a role in. Extended family, I come from a Persian Jewish family where we're expected to hang out often, and there's a lot of obligations and fun, but also it can feel really daunting, or like it takes up a lot of my time. So I've had to work with my family to create some boundaries there. Self-care and development, health and wellness, friendships and social life, household maintenance, and hobbies and extracurriculars. So that feels like a pretty exhaustive list to me, but there might be something that exists in a different bucket for you. So I just put this here as a suggestion and an invitation, but whatever else you want to create or write around that, you're welcome to. I am happy to use myself as an example. This is a look at my values and commitments as of 4 months ago, like 2 cohorts ago for my workshop. I put this slide together, and the hours on the right are per week. And you can see the values that I outlined at the time were family, growth, health, love, and fun. And actually, as I was preparing for this presentation, I thought to myself, I actually want to change the family one to authentic connections, because it doesn't just, it's not about just like spending time with my family. I really want to enjoy and savor, the moments that I have, especially with my kids at the stages that they're at. And then also I have a ton of social events and things I do. And I want them to feel meaningful. So I had a rule actually at one time, and this is an example of aligning the way you show up with what you value. I used to get social anxiety going to these big parties. It's culturally a big thing we do. And I remember deciding that I'm going to have 3 meaningful conversations at any event I go to. And instead of trying to say hi to everyone and spending the whole time, feeling really conscious, I would hone in on people that I wanted to have a meaningful conversation with. And to be perfectly honest, some people are not up for that, right? Some people are really good at small talk, but some people are good at really deep talk. And for me, that made that commitment aligned with my values. So that's just an example of how doing this work clarifies what is important to you, and whether you're actually spending your time in a way that feeds and nurtures those values, or if there's a disconnect. So I've put some questions here to help illuminate where is there alignment and where is there a disconnect, right? The whole point of this exercise is clarity. And once you've listed these things, your values and your commitments side by side, you can start to assess how much you're spending time feeding the things you value, and where are you not at all feeding those values, right? What's missing for you in the way that you're spending your time and energy that's not coming back to who you want to be and how you want to show up. I also feel that it's really helpful with starting to identify which responsibilities you would be willing to delegate or take on in certain areas of your life. So, especially since many of you said you're the primary caregiver, I, for example, really detest being asked what's for dinner. I don't like I don't like cooking. I don't enjoy, I'm a baker, but I don't enjoy that piece of my domestic responsibilities. My husband, on the other hand, grew up in a family restaurant and is an amazing cook and really enjoys it. It actually nourishes him. It gives him energy, whereas me, it just makes me feel inadequate and shitty. So we decided that that's something that he can take on, right? I still cook once a week, or I get takeout or whatever I need to do. But I've realized that's something that for me, doesn't define being a good mom, right? I'm okay with not being the one that prepares dinner. On the flip side, I love making photo albums, right? My husband has never made a photo album. So that's something I don't mind staying up till 2 a.m. to create a photo album for my kids. And I see how much joy it brings them. And that's a part of that role that I really enjoy. So I get to decide what parts of these roles that I've been handed do I want to hold on to, and what am I okay letting go of? And that's when we can start making shifts, right? That clarity is an invitation to shift. If what you're doing right now and the way you're spending your time isn't working for you, you feel depleted, you feel frustrated, you feel like you're really busy but not actually productive, you got to look at which of your values are you attending to most and which of your values are you neglecting, right? And one thing I love to do when we do this full-length workshop is, because it's broken out over 4 weeks, is one of the homework assignments for that week is, okay, what's one thing that you can take off your calendar for next week, right? One event. And what would you replace that with, right? Don't sit there scrolling on Instagram. That's really easy to do. If you're not going to go to the parent PTA meeting, right? Because you're like, they're just talking over each other. I don't really want to be there. It's a waste of my hour. Let's say that's the situation. What are you going to do with that hour instead? Are you going to go for a walk with your dog? Are you going to call a friend long distance that you haven't connected with in a long time? What is going to feed your soul and come back to those values that you've said are important to you? I will share that some shifts I've made in the past few years is that my nanny, who drives, I have a part-time nanny on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and she drives, but she's not comfortable driving to work, but she is comfortable driving my kids. My parents had an extra Prius that's 20 years old and they were using very occasionally. So I asked them, can I borrow it? And now my nanny gets to pick up my younger one 3 times a week, and that frees up an entire hour that I don't have to stop a meeting or even something fun that I'm doing for myself to just go pick him up. I'll see him at home and I'll come refreshed, right? I also do carpool for my other child who's at a different school. Twice a week, someone else is handling pickups, and I'm taking care of their pickups the other day. I've decided that I'm not going to do other people's work, like with these WhatsApp groups. I'm sure all of you are in some parent WhatsApp group related to your kids' schools, if not multiple. And it's made it impossible to feel like you don't have to reply, right? And when people are asking for volunteers or can so-and-so do, I've learned to tolerate silence in conversations and in chat groups, and not feeling like I have to volunteer just to be like, come on guys, let's move on with it already. That's how I ended up being the room parent for my preschool class. Nobody was volunteering, and so I did it. But I'm starting to not do those things and be like, my cup is full, my plate is full as I want it to be. So someone else is going to have to show up for this, right? And the one other shift that I've made that has been really helpful is redefining self-care, which I feel like could be, Jeff, maybe we do a whole nother webinar on redefining self-care. Because I can say, especially for women, a lot of times it looks like things like getting your nails done, right? I actually really love a good massage, but I started replacing the things that seem like kind of obvious surface level self-care with things like journaling, writing, therapy, going to the theater with my mom, right? So I have I also started a list. This is something I really highly recommend in my Evernote, which was, what are all the different ways that I can provide myself self-care? And I organized them by how long of a time slot I needed. And so I started carrying magazines, like I get Vogue and Vanity Fair every month and I never read it. So I started putting it in my car. And if I got to pick up early, I would sit for 5 minutes and I would read it. Or I would do a 3-minute meditation, instead of just feeling like I'm waiting for the next thing that I have to do. The next phase of the framework is dream and manifest. When we do this piece in a full-length workshop, we also create vision boards, right? And I feel like vision boards and the law of attraction is probably familiar to most people at this point, right? It's especially with like pop psychology and self-care really trending. I just want to speak on the value of that, right? Rather than just hoping that these dreams suddenly materialize and like pasting stuff on a board and being like, I'm going to get my dream car. These exercises are really about getting into the mindset of not limiting yourself before you fully allow yourself to dream, right? A lot of times we'll start dreaming and we're like, but I can't because I have pickup or because I have a partner who is traveling all the time. Before you get to the buts and to what might be a roadblock, first dream it, imagine it, create it. What would it look like if you were creating that from your heart's desire rather than from a logistical standpoint, right? So rather than just getting through life as we tend to do on autopilot, it goes back to the intention setting that we talked about at the beginning. So the two questions that I like to do as writing prompts is, what is on your personal bucket list and what's on your professional bucket list? Right. And sometimes you might be surprised that you've already accomplished something that was a bucket list item for a younger version of yourself. Or you might get clarity on how some of your goals relate to one another. I get a lot of coaching career exploration clients who feel like the things they want to do are all very disconnected and broad, and they can't figure out how to bring them together. But once they start writing down all the things that are on their bucket list, we realize they actually can get lumped together in various like-minded areas of focus, and weaving them together as a narrative is not as hard as it may seem. It's just getting really clear on it first. It also allows us to figure out where are the opportunities to integrate and overlap between our personal desires and our professional ambitions, right? So I really encourage everyone to take some time to do this dreaming, right? In whatever way it feels most fulfilling. And if you decide to do a dream board, I love doing it on Canva. I feel like that's a tool. Like I used to get out all the magazines and stuff, but now you can actually search for exactly what it is that you want and create that vision. I created a model of a car that I cannot afford for a very long time, but I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go through the exercise of what it looks like to put this car together. And now it's like that's sitting somewhere in the universe. And I really believe that these things, they come to you when they're meant to, but also you have to know you want them. Otherwise, how are they going to show up? On that note, I love this quote from Sadhguru. Once your mind gets organized, the way you think is the way you feel. So your emotion will also get organized. Once your thought and your emotion are organized, your energies will get organized in the same direction. Once your thought, emotion, and energies are organized, your very body will also get organized. Once all these four are organized in one direction, your ability to create and manifest what you want is phenomenal. And I can say from personal experience, that's true. And also I've seen it for other people. But it's really separating yourself from this idea of like, if I put it on a board, it's going to happen, and just really getting honest with yourself about what's important to you and what that could look like. So now that you've done some blue sky dreaming, right? I hope that you guys will spend some time writing this down, taking some time to yourself to dream. You need to figure out what it would take to make it a reality. What version of those dreams are within reach and how, right? So the two things that we do, and this comes out of my work with entrepreneurs when they're like, okay, I'm ready to do marketing. It's like, no, you're not. What's your business about? What are you trying to accomplish with your business, right? And I say the same thing. I notice a lot of people are not currently working outside of the home, so they might be considering going back to some type of, I put work in quotation marks because we should, because the concept of work has morphed time and time again. And I remember quitting my corporate job at Mattel because I wanted to have more autonomy over my life and my schedule. And people just couldn't understand that, like, I want to go hiking on a Wednesday and then come and do my client work in the afternoon, right? We now living in a post-pandemic world where flex and remote working is a lot more prevalent, and employees are much more likely to be flexible. This has taken on a whole new way of what work can mean and look like. And for some people, that work may not be income producing, or financial stress might be the motivation for it. So it really depends, right? When I spoke at the high school career day, one of the kids asked me if anybody else works for me. And I said, no, I like to work on my own. I made that decision a few times when I had the opportunity to scale. And he said, but wouldn't you make more money if people worked for you? And I said, that's probably true for a lot of different businesses. But my financial metric and success is only one bucket, one filter. I make this circle because I write them out in circles, my filters. It's only one element of what I consider to be feeding my career ambitions and what I consider to be success, right? So yes, I want to make a certain amount of money that allows me to do X, Y, and Z in my life and the way that it looks in my partnership, my family, and my circumstances. But I also want to feel intellectually stimulated. I want to feel creatively fulfilled. I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to lean in and out of my work as it serves me. Right now, it's, I'm going to Costa Rica for 9 days and I can do that. But also when I took maternity leave, I didn't get paid, right? So there's going to be trade-offs. So defining what it is that you're trying to accomplish with your work will make it easier for you to decide what's worth trading off. Okay. And that feeds directly into what do you need to do to make this a reality, right? So for some of us, I know people that have gone to med school after having 3 kids, right? Because they decided that was their calling. So where are the areas that you're trying to reach, and what are the gaps that may need to be filled to make it a reality? You might need a certification for something, or a mentor, or an internship. What trade-offs are you willing to make this dream a reality? What logistics do you need to figure out? I think that's where a lot of us get hung up is, well, there's no one else to take care of my kids in the afternoon, or I'm very privileged that I have family that lives here that allows for me to travel when I want or do a pickup when I'm stuck in a bind. But people find their tribe and they create that community even where it doesn't naturally exist. So who can you lean on? And like I used to be really uncomfortable leaving my kids with my parents for too long. They would like shove them in front of the TV, or they wouldn't do things the way I wanted. And then I ultimately decided risking that was much more valuable so that I could do the things I needed to do, so that I could take 2 days off with my husband and reconnect and invest in my marriage and my relationship. And it would be okay if they just, ate chocolate croissants and watched Mickey Mouse for 2 days so that I could do that, right? So what are the trade-offs that maybe you weren't willing to make before, but now informed by the values and commitments and all these exercises you've done, that you are willing to make? So some of you are thinking, that's cute, but I don't function in a vacuum, right? Most of us, we either live with other people, we co-parent, if not in a marriage, possibly separated co-parenting. You have people that are in your orbit that are going to be affected by these choices that you make, and also affect what choices you feel you have, right? So in the full-length version of this workshop, we create scripts for these conversations. I'm really big on scripts. I'm a writer. My husband actually just wrote a newsletter on how a lot of our disagreements, I end up writing a very long essay to him afterwards, because that's how I can communicate without being reactive. And then he does better in person. So we kind of, we use our different means and love languages to meet each other where we're at. And these can be big and sensitive conversations for a lot of people, and dynamics are different in every relationship, and expectations of how each person's going to show up and take care of the kids or not is different. But this needs to be a conversation in order to be able to implement tools for success. So talking about thinking about through what are the boundaries you currently have in place that are or are not serving you? What new boundaries will you have to create? That might be for those of you that are already at work. If your work feels like it's continuing to seep into your personal life, what are the boundaries that you need to create there? Do you need to turn email off? Do you need to take email off your phone during the weekends? What is it that's going to allow for that clean boundary? And now that you have your renewed sense of purpose and clarity, how is that going to potentially affect your existing relationship dynamics? And how can you preempt that? How can you bring those people into the conversation rather than feeling like you're just, piecing out of it and leaving them behind? One thing I do in my relationship are these Sunday night alignment meetings. So my husband and I every Sunday night sit and look at the week ahead and figure out, because we're both entrepreneurs and our workflow ebb and flow, we decide what we can each take on, right? Because as I said, it looks different day to day, week to week, month to month. So you have to keep revisiting these conversations. And part 4 of the framework is align and launch, right? This is to align with yourself, your partner, your boss, your family. In the full-length version, we do an exploration framework, career mapping. What are the different paths that you're considering, the things that you want to do? Who are the people you know in those areas that you can connect with? What are the pros and cons off, surface level that you're already envisioning? What kind of due diligence and research do you need to do? Who's in your network that you can leverage? What type of personal branding do you need so that you can articulate what it is you want and ask people for it? You would be surprised how often people will give you what you want. You just need to know what it is you want and be able to ask for it. So that's the last piece, is exploring the various paths you're considering and then creating an action plan and timeline so that you know what you're working towards and not feeling overwhelmed by it all. So it's like this week I'm working on having informational interviews or talking to people that are in the spaces that I like, or I love finding role models, right? So I look at the other women that, working or not, that are embodying the values that I resonate with, and I want to ask them how they're doing it. I have friends who have 4 kids and work full time, and I have friends with 2 kids that don't work outside the home, right? Everyone has their different thresholds, values, relationship dynamics, but I like to learn how people have made it work, because that's the formula. It's figuring out, getting back to you and what you want, rather than just feeling like you have to work within the circumstances. And then the last piece I'll say is that this work is not one and done, right? As entrepreneurs, my husband and I continue to experience evolution in our individual businesses and our needs to co-parent our children at different stages and ages. So we come back to these conversations for ourselves over and over again to make sure it's still working for us individually and as a family. And a few of the things we do is every year, at the end of the year, we debrief. We go through, like, what were the trips that we loved the most? Where did we feel like we wasted our money that could have been better invested? What do we want to do for the next year? We do some of this dreaming that we talked about together. What are our dreams? Because so much of it is just like getting through it, and it doesn't feel fun or joyful or nice, right? So when we can dream together and share our gratitude for each other, that allows a bond that can really move us forward. And again, those Sunday night meetings, I swear by them. And once upon a time, we did monthly financial meetings, which I need to bring back. So figure out what it is that, it might be in writing, it might be in person, what works for you in your little world. And the last thing I'll just throw up here before we go to Q&A is I wanted to give everyone my contact info. Jeff spoke about Cycle Breaker. These, if you ask me for the slides, I'm happy to send them to you. My email is on there. And also these link from here, but Cycle Breaker is my Substack. You can find me on LinkedIn. I do individual coaching and consulting for businesses and organizations. And then my upcoming virtual workshop kicks off April 10th. And it takes this exact material much more in depth with the support and accountability from a group. We'll do breakout sessions, there'll be take-home assignments. And because it takes place over 4 consecutive weeks, you get to start seeing some of these shifts in real time, which is really fun and gratifying. I did include a promo code for you guys, Terriers, for a discount. And just a note that there's, I think, about 10 spots left. So if it's something that you think you'd benefit from, I recommend registering for that sooner rather than later. And if you're in Southern California, I saw there was a couple people on there. We will be announcing more in-person sessions soon. And I have had requests to go into different people's companies or organizations. So on backtoworkshop.com, you can sign up for the email listserv or email me directly at my jess@jesskimia.com and let me know what you're interested in. I really love doing this work. And as you can tell, I feel very creatively fulfilled by it because I've been able to do this work-life integration. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to share that with you and hope that it sparks the next phase for all of you.
Jess, this is fantastic. I've done over the years lots and lots and lots of helping run these webinars, and I don't know that I've had one that has quite set off so many light bulbs in both my head and in my heart. It's really kind of affirming to hear you identify and to hear you talk about some of these challenges and how people can take a stab at making things better for everybody. So a reminder to folks, please either use the chat or the Q&A to let Jess know what your questions are. I was thinking, Jess, as we're waiting for questions to come in, as you were telling the story about, you know, not feeling fulfilled by being asked about what's for dinner and cooking, and the idea that you sort of consciously realize, like, this isn't filling my cup. So, you know, for the most part, my husband can take that on, and that's an agreement you came to in your relationship. I'm one of those people that I think it's kind of hard for me to identify, like, what I'm good at. What are the things I like doing in the equation of, like, running our family or on my team at work, et cetera. Do you have any advice for somebody like me in terms of, like, I know you talk so much about, like, visioning, and do you have thoughts for folks that may be a little bit challenged in identifying those areas where you can maybe put something off, renegotiate? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. So I'm looking at my closet where I have notebooks full of this sort of processing. So I think you need to carve out the time to think about this stuff, because it's not going to just, like, come to you when you're doing other things, right? You actually need to be like, I'm going to take myself to a coffee shop for an hour or two, and I'm going to think through what my career, what I've done so far, and which parts I really liked and which parts sucked. And what were, like, the sort of people I liked working with? What were the sort of projects I liked working on? What do I feel were my unique skills and contribution that I want to continue doing? What are the things that I want to incorporate moving on? And same thing with, what do I love about parenting or creating a home and raising a family? What are the things that really stress me out? Why do they stress me out? Right? Where do I feel that I'm thriving, and where do I feel like I'm just, like, paddling water? I think actually having concrete examples is really helpful. And also recognizing, like, for example, I told a friend of mine who has 4 kids, I was like, why don't you carpool for any of them? Like, you're in the car all the time. And she said, my best conversations with my kids are in the car. So for her, it was non-negotiable, right? Whereas for me, I was like, I just get annoyed that I've been sitting there and wasting my time. I'd much rather, like, play a board game with my kid at home. Whereas I have another friend who hires a babysitter just to play with her kid while she's home, because she doesn't like playing. She likes the nurturing aspect of parenting, right? So, like, not being embarrassed to admit that stuff to yourself, I think, is the first step. But honestly, just carving out the time to intentionally think about it and ask yourself questions, right? So when I do this work with individuals, I do a 3-hour block where I ask 100 questions. And naturally, these things come up, like, why did you take this job to begin with? Why did you study what you studied in college? What were the other careers that you were considering? Why did you rule them out? Is it because someone told you you weren't good at it? Is it because someone told you you wouldn't make enough money, or it was, you know, beneath you, or whatever it was? Like, what informed this whole narrative that got you to where you are now? And which pieces were helpful, and which pieces do you want to say goodbye to? Right?
You got me, like, reeling. I got a lot of work to do this weekend.
I can't wait to hear what comes out of it.
You know, our audience is being a little bit shy and quiet, but what that tells me is I think your email address is about to get bombarded with want to ask you stuff kind of offline here. But you know, you talked about doing unpaid work, and you've made this incredible contribution to us today. But what you're allowing so many people to do around the world with our alumni that are tuning is to do that self-care and the development and growth work. So on behalf of everybody at BU, I just want to thank you so much for doing this. I mean, folks might not know, but what I asked you to do was take this, like, 4-part series that you do and crunch it down into, you know, a 45-minute presentation. And I think you did a great job. And I'm just so thankful that you shared this with us today.
Thank you, Jeff. And thanks for giving me the opportunity, because now I'm a firm believer that because this was aligned with what I want to do long term, this very deck is going to go somewhere else too, right? And it's gonna continue to evolve and manifest. And it forced me to sit and spend the time thinking about what does it look like to distill this information into an introduction, right? So I really consider these things as an invitation. So thank you for that.
My pleasure, and you're welcome. Our next career webinar is coming up on Thursday, April 4th, and we're going with a title called Worth the Risk, Small Acts of Bravery to Grow Resilience. And I know resilience is certainly a topic that comes up for so many folks in our careers these days. You can sign up for that now on our website at bu.edu/alumni. As always, I hope you on that website also keep an eye on our alumni events calendar to see all the things that are happening online and around the world. If you're not seeing it, make sure you look out for our monthly career newsletter that we send to alumni called The Edge, where we list out upcoming events and resources. Like one thing we've got that I've been working on right now is season 3 of our alumni career podcast called Proud to Be You. So thank you to all of you that have tuned in, but really, Jess, thank you so much for sharing your experience and your expertise with us. You've muted yourself, but
It was a true pleasure. Thank you.
thanks so much. And everybody for tuning in. Thanks. Hope you have a great day, great evening, wherever in the world you might be. Take care.
Bye.